All right, let's dive in. Today, we're taking a deep look at one of the most influential texts in history, the New Testament. But we're not just going over the stories. Oh no, we're going behind the scenes, looking at the very language it was first written in. What can the original Greek tell us that maybe, just maybe, gets lost in translation? Let's find out. So when you pick up a Bible today, everything is so neat, right? You've got chapters, verses, paragraphs, it's all laid out for you. But have you ever stopped to wonder what it looked like before all that? Before the English, before the Latin? What did the actual original pages look like? That's the question we're tackling today, and trust me, the answer is probably not what you're expecting. It's so easy to forget that every single translation is also an interpretation. Think about it. Translators have to make choices on which words to use, and in that process, tiny, subtle shades of meaning can sometimes just vanish. So, to get as close as we can to the source, we've got to look beyond the English and see the language the authors themselves were using. So, what was this language? Was it some kind of ancient, mystical tongue that only a few scholars knew? Not at all. It was actually the common language of its time, the one you'd hear on the street, spoken all across a massive empire. And it had a name that, well, it pretty much hit the nail on the head. The language was Koine Greek. And that word, koine, it literally means common. This wasn't the fancy, high-minded classical Greek of philosophers like Plato. Nope. This was the everyday, get your groceries, talk to a soldier kind of Greek. It was the language of the people. This means the New Testament wasn't written for some academic elite. It was written to be understood by everyone. Just to give you some context, take a look at this timeline. You can see Koine Greek pop up right after the classical period, around 333 BC. And that date is absolutely no accident. It's tied directly to Alexander the Great. As he conquered his way across the known world, he spread Greek culture and language, which created the need for a single, common version of Greek that everyone in his new empire could use. Okay, so if we're going to understand the language, we have to start with the absolute basics, right? The building blocks. For Koine Greek, that means we're looking at an alphabet that's been around for thousands of years. So, the Greek alphabet has 24 letters. It was actually adapted from an even older system, the Phoenician alphabet. But the Greeks did something revolutionary, a real game changer. They added dedicated letters for vowels. This was a huge innovation that made writing so much more precise. And what's really incredible is that these same letters are still used in Greece today. The alphabet also has some fun little quirks. You've got letters for these cool combined sounds like psi and xi, and then you've got the letter sigma, which is basically their S. But get this, it has two different forms. You use the first one, sigma, anywhere in a word, except for the very end. If a word ends with an S sound, you have to use the final form, xi. It's a small detail, but it's one of those things that's absolutely crucial to reading it right. Okay, now this is where things get really, really interesting, and maybe a little mind-bending. In English, word order is king. Dog bites man and man bites dog are two totally different stories, right? Well, in Greek, word order is way more flexible because the words themselves actually change shape to tell you what they're doing. They're like grammatical shapeshifters. This whole concept is called inflection. Instead of relying on where a word is in a sentence, a Greek word changes its form, usually just the ending, to signal its job. Is it the subject? The object? Is it showing possession? You don't need the sentence structure to tell you. The word's ending does all the work. It's like each word wears a little tag that says, "Hi, I'm the one doing the action." Let's look at a real example. Take the word Kyrios, which means Lord. If the Lord is the one doing the action, it's Kyrios. But if you want to say something belongs to the Lord, like the prayer of the Lord, the ending changes to Kyrio. If you give something to the Lord, it becomes Kyrio. And if the Lord is the one receiving the action, like the Father sent the Lord, it's Kyrion. See that? It's the same core word doing four completely different jobs just by changing its ending. Honestly, the best way to think of it is like this. Greek nouns are like multi-tools. You've got one central piece, the word itself, and you just swap out the attachments on the end to give it a completely different job. It's an incredibly efficient way to build a sentence. Okay, so now that we have a feel for the language, let's circle back to our big question. What did these texts actually look like on the page? Because, let me tell you, it's not what you'd think.
We're all familiar with how a verse like John 1:1 looks in a modern book. It's clean, it's got punctuation, capital letters, it's easy to read. But you have to remember this beautiful layout is a pretty modern invention. For hundreds of years, it looked nothing like this at all. And here's a fact that just blows my mind every time. Not a single original manuscript, a scroll or page physically written down by Matthew or Paul or John, has ever been found. Everything we have is a copy of a copy of a copy.
So, what did those earliest copies we do have actually look like? Well, you might want to brace yourself. It's a little different. This is what John 1:1 looked like. It's a style called scriptio continua, or continuous script. It is just a solid, unbroken stream of capital letters. There are no spaces between the words, no lowercase letters, no chapters, no verses, and almost zero punctuation. It's just a wall of text. I mean, can you imagine trying to read that out loud? You'd have to figure out where one word stopped and the next one started, all in your head in real time. There was no punctuation to tell you when a sentence ended, and no accent marks to help you pronounce the words. It took an incredible amount of skill just to read this stuff, let alone copy it by hand without making mistakes. And speaking of punctuation, here's one last amazing little fact for you. While their period and comma were basically the same as ours, other marks were totally different. That raised dot often worked like a colon or a semicolon. But the craziest one, the Greek question mark, was our semicolon. So yeah, if you were reading an ancient Greek text and saw a semicolon, it meant someone was asking a question. How wild is that? So all of this brings us to one final big question to think about. We've seen how just changing the ending of one Greek word can totally change its meaning, and how early readers had to decide where words even began or ended. So it makes you wonder, if the very structure of a language is so complex, how does language itself, the very words we use, end up shaping what we believe? Something to think about. Thanks for watching.